My name's Dizzy. I'm a creative director in the city, and I also do public art, murals, set design, and production. And I like to dip my hands into a little bit of everything if I can, when I can.
So you know me, I went back and scoured the internet for things that I could talk about, and one of the things that caught my eye was Artemisia Gentileschi.
Mainly male artists were kind of flourishing at that time. She kind of made her stake as a female artist, and then also as a woman who was mistreated and abused by men, and then like people would never believe her whenever she come forward to say anything, or there was just no point in her feeling like she needed to voice her issues, so she just put it in her art. And I thought that was pretty inspiring because she had such a good hand on light. And so it was like her light sources were sharp, her like the blending was sharp, everything was just like, oh, that's one of my favorite paintings. So I've definitely been trying to get my art to get to that point with the light and dark, the chiaroscuro, and the drama that she can convey within those pieces. He told me he was going to introduce me to Maya about 8 years ago. I moved back to Atlanta from Alabama. I was going to school out there, and I started working as a teacher, an art teacher, around that time. It was like 2016. I was told by like a lot of my friends in Alabama to go check out City of Ink, to check out Maya Bailey and all this stuff. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't know like what he was about, what he did, or anything like that. And then I went to a show that one of my friends who told me to check him out. I went to a show she was a part of, ended up meeting a lot of the people who were in and out of the this whole thing that they were doing or whatever. And I met Maya. From that point, I met Quake. At the time, like I said, didn't know who these people were. So I didn't think it was like a huge deal. It was like, oh, okay, cool. I get to meet these people, but what am I going to do with them? That following year, after that show, Maya asked me to be in the next anniversary show. And that was a pretty dope experience. I was glad that I got to be a part of it. And then at Peter Street Station, like right when they opened up, after that, he was sold. And then we had Quake and I had a duo show. And so we helped them like put down floors. We helped fix up the walls and paint and things like that, just to kind of get it more of like that gallery feel. Show was awesome, success. And after that, we just kicked it at Peter Street. Artistically, it's still mind-blowing to me. It's like we can work as one person. At least that's what the result will look like. It's like one person did this. That's amazing because I didn't like the partner things in school. Like I didn't like the group projects. It was kind of cool to finally be with somebody that can literally just finish my thought, and in the manner of an entire piece. And we were able to teach each other, what we both do, and then apply that and keep it pushing. So now he's painting, he's doing murals and stuff like that. And that's pretty cool to me. I think it's really dope to actually have a partner. That's still where I am and where I want to be when it comes to my artwork, is the using different cultures to kind of explore how people deal with death, and it's to create better coping mechanisms. So it's like I've never really liked the whole traditional funeral concept, what we do in America at least. And so I started to look into other ways that people have, laid their loved ones to rest. Everybody does it differently. And I just from there was stuck researching, reading about this, making art about it, creating a lot of like work that depicted death without actually saying like, oh, it's a dead person, or like it's, like without being obvious, I guess. It was fun. It's still fun. This solo show that I'm doing is all about that. So this time, instead of just death, this one's about grief. And so I'll be going through just the processes that we actually go through when we deal with death. And then eventually I want to deal with like decomposition, how the body goes, things that people don't really bother to look into. The people who look at death in a celebratory fashion, they can only deal with death in a different type of way. You know what I mean? Like we approach funerals already in a somber way. We wear black, like we play this very somber music. It's really sad. But there are so many cultures that celebrate it so much that it's like, okay, well, what do you do tomorrow? You know, like, what do you do the next day after you've dealt with this and you celebrate it? Like, do you cry? Do you feel sad? Like, what is that? And a lot of times I feel like those questions come from our American response to death. And it's like, this is just the only way that we can comprehend it. So obviously, you have to be able to do it the same way. But they might deal with death in whole different ways that we don't even know how to start dealing with.
I can't help but think that our approach to death leads to some of our selfishness and greed.
Yeah, for
during
sure.
our lives.
At least I would like to think that what Sophie was feeling was a lot of hopelessness among, you know, knowing that she could make a change and feeling like she could make that change. But then it's like, I still don't really know how far this is going to go. Like, I still don't really know how this is going to be received. I'm going to try it, but yeah, she was still fighting for what she believed in. She was still fighting to get this change out, but she still had this like doubt in the back of her mind. And that's what made it so emotional for me. Cause it's like, that's what we do all the time, you know? And with the way the world has been going, it's like all we're doing is pushing for better, but we still have this weird feeling that's like, is it going to be better? Like, are things going to change the way we think they are? You know? So yeah, I felt that. I super felt that in reading that story.
Jesus in the garden, like, let this cup pass before me. Like, I know what I've got to do. I just don't want to do it because I'm not sure that it's worth it.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It's that, I don't know, it's like hopeless optimism in a way, you know? So yeah, I definitely took that part personally, you know. I don't even think they said who it was that picked up the last leaflet and spread it all over Germany, but it was that was that like last little effort, you know? And I thought that part was at least beautiful because it was like, yeah, you weren't able to change the world. Like you didn't, you know, that's cool, but you still was able to get this out in a much larger way than you even thought you could.
You've got this moody kind of sunset, this kind of somber thing, and the leaflets are kind of falling rather than flying. They feel like ashes more than like birds, I guess, to me.
Yeah, they definitely was to portray that hopelessness. The sunset was to show the symbolization of Sophie Scholl having to die for this to be a thing and for this to actually take place. And then I put her last words in that leaflet that was like in focus. So the top and bottom papers were her last words. And it was the thing that she was saying about, you know, what are we doing this for? You know, if we're not going to reach thousands and millions of people, what was my death for? Why does it matter? At first, too, when I did the leaflets in the sky, they were initially white roses that were falling from the sky. But as I was painting the white roses, in the process of painting them, I was doing it at Peter Street. So one of the artists, he walked by and he was like, yo, you did like the hell out of those crumpled up pieces of paper. And I was like, huh, they do look like crumpled up pieces of paper. And so then I continued and I was like, well, let me just make them crumpled pieces of paper to kind of further express that hopelessness. You know, it's like, imagine how many times they wrote these leaflets and probably thought this is not going to do anything before they actually decided, let's get this out to people. You know, so it's like it had to have been a bunch of balled up pieces of paper that they were just tossing by, trying to figure out the right words to say to the public. Yeah, there was a lot of somber energy
Like you've got the torn paper on the top and bottom, almost
Mhm.
like you tore apart the paper and behind it was this like sunset.
That was definitely the intention. When I started painting it, that was how I started it. I took the paper and wrote out the note, and then I just ripped the paper up, and then I had put it back like in a notebook and sketched out where the sunset was going to go. So it was going to be like the sunset behind this paper. But then it was like once I started adding the other papers in there, it's like, oh, well, I can incorporate this paper as one of the leaflets that was also falling from the sky. But it gives you an option to look at it both ways.
I liked how you related it to Atlanta in the sense that these things are still out there in the air, floating and flying and fluttering down upon us with lessons to learn today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we ignore so much, and then it's like we ignore so much while trying to find justice for different issues, while we're trying to find a way to cope with different issues, while we're trying to find just different ways to feel better. It's like we're still ignoring like a lot, and in that, it's like, okay, well, how do we get people to remember that, okay, yeah, you might be going through this. The world is dealing with this, or like Atlanta's dealing with this, or the United States is dealing with this. There are a lot of bigger issues, I guess, for us to be concerned about, or at least for us to be trying to band together on versus, just ignoring it for our personal greater good. So, yeah.
Definitely apathy was one of the biggest themes of the White Rose that they were fighting against. Was like, if just everybody here stopped ignoring this,
We'd be good. We'd be able to move on. I know with John Lewis, I might have been too young to really have held on to those experiences in the way that I feel like I should have, or at least like to have talked to him and taken away some insight, because he had put me in a this art show that he was doing for scholarships, and it was a scholarship to SCAD. And so I had just kind of been introduced to fine art and just kind of doing fine art for myself. But I was still in high school, like 15, I think 14, 15. And so I got volunteered basically into this show. And I didn't know that it was done by John Lewis. I didn't know it was curated by his team or anything like that. I was just like, okay, whatever. If you want to send my art off, send it off. But I didn't understand how any of it worked. So I got there, I met him. He said that my work was amazing and, just kind of like the typical stuff. And I just kind of like blew it by. But then the following year, I was called back. And so he came again and he remembered me. I was one of the only people that came for a second time. And so he remembered who I was. He met my family, talked to my parents, and like, he just really like, we took a bunch of pictures together. And he's like, see, I knew it. Like, I knew that you would be further on than you were back then. And now you're about to graduate and things like that. Your work is 10 times where it was back then. And I just really look forward to seeing you creating in the future. And so it was really like a, I don't know, like more inspirational than it was like insightful, I guess. So yeah. And I mean, I was really young. So I was just kind of like, oh, he's cool. Like, this is great. It's a cool opportunity. But I was still kind of stuck on the fact that I wanted this scholarship. So that's really where my head was.
I think that's a good segue into nonviolent protest, which blows my mind, the strength that it takes. Because I mean, I'm not really an aggressive person, but at a certain point, I'm gonna punch back, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I was in a nonviolent protest for Sandra Bland, and that was the one that, It turned into a riot downtown. It we shut down 75. It was bad. But it started out really nice. Like it wasn't peaceful per se, but it was definitely nonviolent. Like nobody was out there with any kind of ill will, no ill intent. I think things got bad when we like stormed the highway because people were still driving. So, and there were hundreds of people all over it, but it was like the most, I don't know, it was so powerful to me. We were at first like, yeah, this is probably not what they did back in the day. Like, this is not how they were protesting, but it definitely was, it felt close. Like it felt like, we spent the entire day singing. We were out there till 4 a.m. and we watched people get like, they threw out the smoke bombs and they threw all the stuff at us and people got tased off of police cars and the one of the police cars caught on fire and it ended up being really bad. But like during the day, it was amazing. It was awesome to be able to get out there and actually be angry, but not be violent or not be aggressive and, fight for what you actually care about. But yeah, I don't know. The nonviolent thing, it's yes, it's the answer. I'm still trying to tell myself it's the answer though. What have I learned about my process? I don't even know if this is something that I learned or if it's something that I always knew and just kind of became comfortable with it. I work well under pressure, for sure. But it was the working under pressure, but still being kind of unsure about how I wanted to tell my interpretation of the story. And I had like 3 or 4 designs, I think, that I had drafted up and then was walking back and forth, talking to different artists, just trying to get like, the best way to depict this, because it was still a very like emotional topic to me. And it was still kind of, it wasn't dark, but it was kind of, I guess it was just, just really emotional. Like the emotional aspect just really, I don't know, it didn't take away from it, but it's like, I needed to add something to this that I didn't really know how yet. So I'm coming up with all these different ways to make this like colorful, make it like, a positive message and things like that until I was finally like, you know what? Maybe this doesn't have to be so positive. Maybe it doesn't have to go this way. Most times as muralists, that's what we think we want to do because it's like people are going to be walking past you and past this wall seeing it. You don't want to do something depressing. But after a while, it was just like, okay, well, I want to put all of the concepts that I want to put in here, about the hopelessness, about the death and all of that, but still not turn someone away. So it was just a lot of like back and forth with myself on how can I do this without creating tension within the piece. And I think that was one thing that I learned for sure how to do, was like still kind of create something it's fluid, it's soft, it's it can be taken as peaceful, it can be taken as hard, but at the end of the day, it's not like when you look at it you're like uneasy or you feel upset by seeing it. You know what I mean? I wanted to make something that would kind of bring people into finding out more about the story, because it's also a not very well known story. So yeah, I definitely learned how to, I don't know, conceptualize my thoughts a little bit better in executing this piece. So for sure, this was just one of the first ones where I actually challenged myself to do it because it was all in front of me. I think it definitely does communicate that lack of hope, with the words being so obviously there, and with her saying what she's saying is like, what does my death matter? Like, I feel like there are certain parts in the note that have people like, hold on, what is she saying? You know what I mean? And it was, I know when I read it, it was just kind of like, oh man, you felt like this even back then. Like, I feel like this now, So I feel like a lot of people feel like this now, that can relate just by seeing this sunset, by seeing these words, and by, you know, just kind of experiencing with it before they look into it and say, well, who said this, you know? Because it's still something that someone can say in 2022 and it holds weight. So yeah. And that's what I wanted, because I didn't necessarily want something that's like, okay, cool, you can look at it in a sea of murals in the city. You know, you can walk past it, look at it, and then just kind of keep it pushing. Like, I want you to be able to walk up to it, stop, and be like, whoa, what does this mean? Like, what is this person trying to say? That's what I wanted. And I feel like I definitely could get that. I think I've definitely learned that I'm not always willing to, I guess, go I don't know, it goes beyond just going the peaceful route. But it's like, it's going against the grain, I guess, like feeling like, okay, cool, how can I do this? And then learning how I can execute a piece, or learning how I can convey a message, and then trying to flip that on its head. And then like, okay, well, how can I take the worst parts of this message and create beauty out of it? And so I've learned definitely that I can still, you know, go against the grain even under pressure. That's pretty cool, because in that whole process, like when I started the painting, I started painting a different piece and then was like, no, this can't be it. Like, I don't know why, but it cannot be it. And then I started immediately switching up. And then while I was painting the current piece that I have now, I was still researching and I was still looking things up. So it was like, yeah, I can definitely pull away from something in the middle of being under pressure. Yeah, I'm glad. I did look up portrait options in the beginning, but then it was like, it just didn't seem like, you know, mainly because Sophie was also a part of a group. You know, this was the White Rose Society in a sense. So it just didn't feel right to paint her and then not, you know, do anything touching on the other members of the group, because this was still a group. It's not like she was like the president, or like she was just, you know, out here just conveying this message all by herself. It was like she was doing this with a group of people. She might have been a little bit more radical, but she was doing this with a group of people, and also her brother. So it was like the fact that there were really no pictures of the entire group that I could have pulled. It just didn't seem right. You know, it seemed like it was more about what she was saying and what the group was saying versus just painting them. You know what I mean? Or just painting Sophie. Look for me in the streets. That's really it. I'm not gonna stop creating. So, and I'm definitely gonna be looking forward to doing more personal work. That's about it.